Self-harm is a negative, unhealthy, maladaptive coping skill. It is a coping skill, but it's unhealthy in nature. A lot of times people associate self-harm with just being in adolescence, but it does affect all populations from adolescent to aging, geriatric, adulthood. A lot of times self-harm is not a form of trying to make a suicide attempt. A lot of times people get really afraid of that, but it really isn't. It's more as a way to cope. And self-harm can look like a myriad of things. It could be cutting on yourself, scratching, burning, hitting your head on something, even trying to use some sort of other negative coping that's self-destructive, such as like using substances or continuing to self-sabotage in some way by making poor decisions. So there could be a lot of different types of warnings, triggers that could lead up to it, but some of the warning signs would definitely include some of those what we would call mood type of symptoms. So whether that be depressive symptoms or even just behavioral issues or behavioral changes. So if they were once not wearing long sleeve outfits and things like that, or wearing sweaters and jackets in hot weather, that's something to look out for. Low self-esteem issues, interpersonal issues, relationship issues, family dynamic issues. I always ask, what does it do for you? What's the reason for it? For an individual that self-harms, a lot of times I'll hear, it's a way for me to have some control, or it's how I express how I feel, or I just feel so numb that it actually helps me feel, or sometimes it kind of reminds me of situations, or I'd rather do this than do something worse. So the reasons differ depending on the person, but there's always something that's gained from it. Try to be non-judgmental as much as possible, to be very, very patient, to not come to any sort of assumptions or conclusions, to have a very soft tone and kind of create that open line of communication for that type of conversation, first of all, and to also be as calm as possible, because it's not an easy conversation to have with a loved one. And then after sitting them down and kind of creating that environment, having that openness to basically kind of point out what you've been noticing, and again, in a very non-judgmental approach. So for example, hey, I've been noticing that you've been staying in your room all day, and that's something that you weren't really doing before. So I'm really, really worried about that. I've also noticed the other day that I've noticed maybe some scratches on your arm, and I was hoping that maybe we can talk about it. I just want to get your take on that. So just finding a way to kind of allow them to speak on it without coming to any sort of harsh assumptions or criticisms, but opening up that conversation. If they're not comfortable talking about that, that is okay, and we need to respect that, and instead, maybe this is something that we can get help with together. Maybe we need to go pursue some sort of outpatient care, or maybe even that's when the hospital comes into play. Maybe we need to go get assessed to see if maybe they can provide more assistance. Communication is always key when it comes to trying to address it with family members, but that validation and that non-judgmental approach goes a long way.